welcome everyone in the audience. Welcome everyone sitting at home. Hope you're having a good time, and please remember to subscribe and push the like button, because we like that, and that makes us happy. With that said, we have just seen Moving in Mayhem. We will put in links for you so you can see them as well, parts of them, online. And let's go to the interview. And I hope I will... I googled mayhem, and I found two explanations. The True Mayhem, that is a rock band in Norway, and also Disorder, Havoc, or even A Hell Broken Loose. Let's get to that in a while, why you choose the name. I hope I will pronounce your name correctly, so let's go with Stanislava Ovchinnikova.
Yes.
I will read from my notes here. Stanislava is a trauma-focused, interdisciplinary artist and curator whose interests lie primarily in the area of politically engaged artistic practices. She curated Moving in Mayhem as a resident of Ukraine Solidarity Residences program in Finland with support of Helsinki International Artist Program, and her work has been presented in places like the Ukraine Parliament, Titanic Gallery,
Yeah, wow. In Turku.
And Taiteen Talo in Turku, and the Show Gallery in LA, amongst others. Aapo Siikala is a classically trained dancer who worked in different stages around the world with the Finnish National Ballet as home base. Besides creating his own dance pieces in the contemporary dance field that has been shown in the Finnish National Opera House, he has worked with choreographers like Jorma Uotinen, Ohad Naharin, Tero Saarinen, and Maija Tettu Vilman. And today, Aapo works as a personal coach, scenographer, and as a costume designer for opera and ballet. And I think that's worth an applause. And I'm Larry Griffiths, and I work as a producer. Stanislava, why the name?
It's a good starting question. It has to do with the way social media algorithms treat conversations about war and genocide. So originally I was trying to find a way to name the program in a way that I could keep writing the name of it in social media posts without the posts being without my account getting shadow banned or the posts getting less reach because I'm talking about something like this.
Yeah, we noticed that because when we actually wrote that it's about a war, or we were not allowed to do the share it online.
Yeah. No, we've seen this a lot with Ukraine, but it's also not exclusive to Ukraine. When people who are talking about the war and who are showing what's happening, they're losing their accounts and yeah.
So what inspired you to do this? To do this whole project?
Well, the archive. I know a lot of people who are involved into the work at Let the Body Speak. And when I was coming to Finland in April this year, I thought of them. I saw the archive, and I saw some of the films in the archive, and I thought they're completely amazing. And then I thought, why not make a program out of it? I was going into an art residency, and I knew that the people who are organizing the residency have connections with different venues also in Finland, and I could offer some exposure also for those artists and for the archive, and also in this way talk about what's happening in Ukraine.
For both of you, if we focus on modern cultural ways of expressions and contemporary dance, can you describe the creative process behind that work, and how do you translate the complexity of difficult themes like abuse, domestic abuse, conflict, and even war into pictures, movement, and choreography? And you worked with Vilman Company where they addressed domestic abuse this summer.
Your question was, how do we address those things, or how do you approach? Of course, you always choose a subject. Like normally Normally, of course, it's a difference if you're working as a collaborator, if you're working as a costume designer for a project, somebody else chose the subject and then you're participating, creating so it's a collaboration because it's somebody else's idea. If it's your own idea, you have to have an inborn passion or inborn need to tell the story of this special subject. So I think in your case, of course, it's born from the need of the circumstances that are right now happening, and that is the reason why you want to tell the story, or it's connected to the time that we live in right now. And if you would choose in some other time of the, let's say that there could be another choice, like if the personal situation of your life would make you to choose, like there would be something in your family or something in your surroundings that you would need to address, the violence towards children so these kind of things, of course, they depend on very much what is the current need at that moment.
Did you see a need in this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was thinking a lot when I was creating the program. I was thinking a lot about the war fatigue and how, the images of atrocities and the images of destruction, they eventually stop working when it comes to trying to get people to care. And they sometimes can be even counterproductive in my experience. Because once you're, as someone who has background in photography, I was also thinking about this a lot because sometimes you need maybe more discrete ways of approaching the topic rather than just showing plain images like this has happened, the people are dead, and in the rubble. So I've lost my train of thought. But I was thinking a lot about war fatigue and how dance in a way can. I was hoping that dance could help fight this. That we could maybe have a conversation that's not so war-focused, but maybe that's focused on human experiences, and that's maybe more universal even. So we can have, in the context of those screenings, we can have conversations that are not only related to Ukraine, but also about working with such things, and can maybe reach also a wider audience. That's among other things.
Because I remember also, we were talking in one interview with Rico Eklund, who is doing a part now in Röda rummet, the Lilla Teatern, and it's an abusive scene. And we were talking about the artistry around it. And I remember many years ago, I was working, I was not working then, but I saw a show, ballet, contemporary, Tango Buenos Aires, 1907. And it started with a rape. And three of the ladies who did the role, one actually broke her pelvis, but two quit because it was too heavy for her. Do you know if any of the dancers who have made these pieces has had some support since they are working with this?
What kind of support do you mean?
Mental support.
External?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think this is, this would probably be a private information. On the other hand, I think that making those works is in a way of building that resilience and of keeping yourself sane. Yeah, I think that for many people, for many artists, even the act of returning to artistic work in this context has already been like, am I allowed to swear?
Yes. We can
Okay, has already been like you, Russia, because they're trying to get rid of our culture, they're trying to destroy our culture, and then for people to go back to what they have been doing, sometimes after multiple months after the full-scale war began, it is already a way of maybe reasserting your own agency over this. And of course, for some people also, you return to something you've been doing for years after years after years, for like 10, 15 years. And it can be also super comforting to return to your work in those contexts. So I think that work in a way can also making artistic work can in a way also serve as this psychological support.
As an artist, in your opinion, Aapo, what role would you say that art has, specifically dance? And what role does it play responding to and processing how we interpret the world as a choreographer and as a dancer? And how do you see contemporary dance contributing to a larger conversation about violence and conflict and in its communities?
Well, dance as a form of expression is very unique to. You don't need a language to reach people's emotions. You need to. It's almost like a dream. You're painting a canvas of leaving an empty room for a person to feel something. So you're actually creating a space for. It's not so much like now that you talked about if somebody how do they as a performer feel, because that is not exactly the like there was a beautiful comment from an actress who said like was playing tragic roles, and they were asking like how does it feel for you to play tragic role night after night, don't you break under this? And she answered like, I'm not crying, the audience is crying. And it's you're creating something for a space for someone else to place their feelings. So it's a metaphor where you cannot dictate how the person is going to respond, but you create a space for it so that they can place, because it's very animalistic how the body reacts to. You can express with the body sorrow or sadness, or how your body reacts to different kinds of emotions. So that's what you're telling. You're telling a story of if somebody's being raped, you're telling a story about violence. You can also show it in a way that the other person is numb and doesn't feel a thing because something is being done to them, and you feel the pain instead of them. So it's the same thing when somebody dies and somebody is close to them and they don't feel a thing, but a person that has a distance, they feel for the person whose near ones died. So I think the same thing happens with the war. We think about the war with how do you say it? We are being empathetic and we feel something, but when you are in the middle of the war, you need to act because maybe you need to go for a shelter. The bombs are going to come, or it's a practical thing. It's not. Yeah. It's happening at that moment, so you don't necessarily feel. You feel afterwards because you're in the middle of the crisis. So
can
say this? Yeah, sure.
I was just thinking also to add maybe to this. Also partially as an artist myself, but I think it's relevant for people in the program as well, for some at least of them. I think when Ukrainians, but also I'm talking about Ukrainian context, but also I would like to emphasize that this is not specific to Ukraine only. But Ukrainians, whenever we have to talk with words about what we're going through and try to get empathy from people and some understanding through words, it always, it's really tied to a great deal of self-censorship and self-abandonment in a way.
Sure.
Because you need to tailor whatever it is you're saying and whatever it is you're experiencing to fit a certain idea of what, of like a Western idea of what resistance needs to look like, or of what people who are victims need to look like, or how they need to behave. And so, for example, it's gonna be a longer point maybe, but I'm gonna give an example. I was an audience member at a panel discussion in which a Ukrainian artist was mentioning how she was interviewing Ukrainian dancers in Ukraine. And she was sharing with people, mostly also Western Europeans, that for those artists it was very important. They always say, when you're in Europe, ask for weapons. We need weapons to defend ourselves. And as she was saying this, she goes, and of course I cannot ask you for weapons. You're not the people who are going to give this. And then an audience member had a very emotional reaction, a German audience member, to this, because this was not something she felt was acceptable for us to bring up during the discussion, or for them to bring up during the discussion. And we're very well aware of what are, or sometimes well aware, sometimes not as well aware, but people know how to tailor our what we're asking for, or what we need in language, in words, whenever we're communicating with people. And I think when it comes to dance and to making artistic work, especially when it's not so tied to language, it's a bit easier to get that empathy, because you don't have to censor yourself so much, because there are, when we're communicating, not with words, but when we're communicating with the body, there are less trigger points and less of those moments that will make people react aggressively somehow to whatever it is you're saying. So it's easier to...
so the non-verbal makes it easier to process and show or bring out a topic that could lead to a violent discussion.
Yes, I think so, in a way. Yeah.
I think, talking about empathy, dance and artistry has the power, this we know, to evoke strong emotions. And do you believe that it can actually help if you can bring out the empathy in people to contribute to raising awareness about situations like this? Not only now talking about Ukraine, but as we said, domestic violence, abuse, all other horrible things that we can think about. Dance can also be shown in a beautiful way. I'm just emphasizing that as well. But do you think you can actually create a change, a movement by artistry?
Is your question politically or humanly?
With empathy and humanity.
Because I would like to go back to what you were saying. Like, did you mean that it is because of politics? Like if you're bringing up politics, then it causes the conflict or the contradiction, or?
I think when we're talking like this, when we're having a conversation, like a normal conversation, we, as Ukrainians, as people who are among many other nations going through genocide, who are going through atrocities, and we have a certain needs, and there is a certain desire to reassert those needs and to vocalize them. But what we need for our resistance and for our defense is not always what people who are not oppressed but who are in a privileged position think that we need. And so what you often are met with, if you're not censoring yourself when you're communicating in a verbal way, is that aggressive reaction or resistance sometimes, and people distance themselves right away, because like for example, the moment that like weapons are brought up or tanks are brought up, when it can be something super sensitive for people, which was surprising for me, but also this is something you're met with. But when we see it in a work, in a different context, when we see it in a dance film, when we see maybe the same needs being asserted in a different way, in a non-verbal way, it's easier to reach people. So it's not necessarily the politics in general, but it is about the particular points that are accepted or not accepted by the Western society.
Your point about that?
It was more about the censorship. That why do you need to censor yourself? Is it because of Russia, or is it because you don't want to talk about directly about the things? Because political indifferences are always like, if we are talking about Israel, if we are talking about your country, if we are talking about something else, there's always a difference of opinions, because people are opposing things. So that's what I think that is beautiful in dance. When you're talking about things, they are universal. It could happen to anybody, anywhere. And for a person who hasn't undergone war, doesn't have any relationship to war directly, but indirectly they are able to probably see the universally humanly feelings like fear and whatever is connected to the thing that is happening. But like you were talking about now, distancing oneself from the subject, not showing exactly what is happening, but showing something else to provoke, is also it's a choice for how to approach the situation. And that's what you do, like when you were asking, that's what you do as an artist. You choose how to approach, how to portray the situation, if you distance yourself or if you put yourself in the middle of it, and if you underline the emotion. It is your choice how to present it. But
also I think it is not always a choice that one can make, because when you're working in Ukraine, for example, there is no question of distancing yourself. I think that's also important to remember. But also to answer your question about the empathy, I think that empathy without critical thinking is a very dangerous thing. And it's the same question.
It goes straight to you. wakes up an emotion?
Because I think maybe thankfully as human beings we can feel empathy for many different people and for many different causes, and it's really easy to manipulate that. It is quite easy to get that empathy from people, and then if we act on something, or if we build our political opinions or political stance based purely on empathy and nothing else, then it gets really confusing and also really dangerous. Because, of course, then your empathy is really reliant on the presentation, on the way a conflict or victimhood is being represented. Because I can start talking. I can talk about Ukrainians who have lost homes, and some people like to talk about Russians who have lost homes, and people have personally maybe similar responses when people are not directly involved in the war. They will feel equal empathy for someone who has lost home, but it is important, and that's why I think critical thinking is really important, and why those conversations are also important. When it has to come in is when you need to understand what are the underlying dynamics, and what is like to maybe look at your empathy as a way, as an expression of your humanity, but also to look at your empathy as a tool that can be also used against people who maybe actually need that empathy. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Let's talk about music.
Can I go a little bit back to what you were saying? Because empathy in like if you're able to present empathy through dance or through art is already important. And it's what I meant, that creating a space for a spectator to decide is always a difficult point for an artist, because probably we would like to dictate, or we would like to manipulate, or we would like to create something that doesn't leave the responsibility for a spectator to choose. But in the end, it's the one who's looking at it that decides or feels something. Yep. And their feeling could be turned towards, like you were saying, either side. So it's still about empathy, and they are the ones who decide whose empathy they choose to. And that's why politics and art sometimes they are very difficult to interact with each other, because
they're so close still.
Because we're still talking about very human things. We're still talking about human emotions, and you can even create a situation where the empathy goes towards the rapist, which could sound weird, but if you're skillful, you could do it, and that would be also a form of manipulation.
A good friend of mine, they were practicing West Side Story, and he invited me over to the Gothenburg Opera one day and said, "Please come. We're rehearsing this scene." And I took it as a compliment. I thought that, he wants my opinion. He wants to see. It wasn't that. And afterwards we talked about this, and I was a bit flattered, and he said, no, I asked you to come because you always have your feelings on the outside. I just want to see if it works. Okay. Music.
I think what empathy evoked by art can be good for is just humanization of people.
Sure.
Because I think that's a very kind of primary point, maybe of trying to also of this program in a way, because you see all those numbers of all the deceased people, and you stop at some point seeing people behind the numbers, and maybe art is like and the empathy that it evokes can be just at least you start seeing those people as human beings again.
Yeah. But I want to ask you, there's a meme circling, and I think it's hilarious, but I think also it's very important because it makes a point. There is a fighting scene, I don't remember which movie it is, but it explains that if you change the music, it can also change the narrative very much. It's a fighting scene when the two guys are starting to take off the clothes. And they took that music away and added romantic music instead. And it looks like they are going to do something completely different than fight. How important, because I remember when you were doing one of your pieces, it was a lot of work, a lot of job to find the right music. Did you have anything to do with the music in this project?
A little bit.
So how important would you say that music is for a dance piece? You can start.
I can start. Since I was not the artist in any of the works, I would say that as a curator of the program, as kind of an observer, I saw that it was that people, many of the artists within the program are choosing music consciously. For example, I think the work of Svetlana Aleksiuk is a super good example, because to take a piece that uses the music written by a Ukrainian composer during German occupation and then use it now, I think it's a very strong decision. And when I was choosing the works, I was also kind of paying attention to how reliant they are on the text. Either in the music, or there were some works in the archive who were based on the poetry as well, and they used the poetry as an accompaniment. Is it an English word? Anyways, there's one case in this program. I'm going to go back a little bit. And there were some pieces that I did not choose because they relied a lot on text and on the words, but they did not have subtitles. And sometimes, and I just didn't have the resources and the time at the time to subtitle the works. But there was one work that I did subtitle, which is the last one that you've seen in the program, because there the music was written specifically for the piece. And the text I found was super important also, because it was the text is a poem written by Serhiy Zhadan, which is one of the most famous Ukrainian contemporary poets. And the poem was also written after the beginning of the war, so after 2014. I think it was either in 2014 or in 2015. And so I subtitled the work because I felt the lyrics, because I felt that they were so crucial to what the piece was. But I think for all the works, I think it can be said here that they are working and choosing them very consciously, and it is another instrument.
How did it go for you?
Well, I go a little bit long way with this. I just recently saw a piece where headphones were used it was a choice of the production to use the headphones, and I took the headphones away, and the dancers, they were doing the piece in complete silence. And what is essential as a maker of anything connected to dance is the rhythm. And if you don't have this, then you're creating it by together without music, you're creating still a rhythm. And usually the traditional way for a choreographer is to choose first the music or the composer that they are working with to start to create a skeleton of a piece where you start from. Then you choose, after the music, you choose if you're going to work against the music or if you're going to work with the music. But anyway, you still have the rhythmical structure of the music. And it was very interesting when the dancers were doing the piece completely in silence. They couldn't hear the music, but the audience could hear the music. So it was almost like you were watching a film, because you could hear their breathing, you could hear their singing, you could hear their talking, and you could hear the music, but they couldn't hear the music. So it's always an effect that you choose. But for me, personally, music is really important. It's because I approach my choreographical approach is always almost like a film. Like you said, you see a scene, by changing the music, you change the context of the scene. You change the atmosphere, but still it can be interesting if there is a music that works against the theme. Then you distance yourself from the emotions, and you're able to watch something that would be otherwise too cruel, or it would be too banal to watch. It would be too underlined to show something. But if you distance yourself with the music, you're able to go through it, and you're able to concentrate on something that comes next. Because it's evident that you tell about it, but it's more important that you concentrate on something else, that you feel something else afterwards. So the feeling is stronger if you didn't feel, if this makes sense. If you didn't feel the thing before, you feel the other emotion stronger. So music and the musical structure, how you move from one musical piece, if you're making a collage of something that already existed, is very important. If you're working with a composer, it's a lottery. You don't really, there was a opera production that I worked with when the music was composed. When we started to do the choreography, we didn't know how the music would be, so that was interesting. It was then you found out in the end how it's gonna. So it was really a creation. So sometimes composing the music can be fruitful, or sometimes it can be very challenging.
But like you said, extremely smart to use old occupation music as just a reminder. Very, very clever. Looking forward, could you share more about the project Let the Body Speak and what their work looks like at the moment? Because you're not done working, are you?
Well, I'm only involved as a guest curator. There are 4 people who are employed full-time. Well, I actually maybe not full-time, but who are the core of the project. And it began, as I said, as an archive. What I didn't say during the introduction, that all the works in the archive have been created after the full-scale invasion. All of them. Okay. So that's an important criteria to be accepted after 24th of February 2022. But soon it grew. So there was a big I want to say influx, but I'm really uncertain that this is the word I should be using, sorry. But anyways, there was a big rise in the amount of works, in the number of works that were submitted to the archive in the first months after the full-scale invasion. Because people were just, and many of them are not professionals. Some of them are maybe dancers, but they've never took a camera in their hand. Some of them are not dancers, they just wanted to do something. And then it was slowly kind of going down, and the numbers now are really small, and people are rarely sending those videos. And so for the project, it became clear that that there needs to be a certain support structure built around the archive. So an educational program was developed. As I told you earlier, there are many lectures and workshops who are freely available online on YouTube. Some of them are in English, some of them are in Ukrainian, but people can go and learn about dance dramaturgy, take some watch some technical classes, talk about site-specific performance, body as a document. There's really a lot of really interesting lectures. So this is an important aspect, and they're continuing doing this and now building bigger and bigger programs around this. There was a workshop on creating dance films with a videographer and I think a dance dramaturg. I might be wrong, but anyways, and they get bigger, which is super nice. Another important aspect is the promotion of the works, of course, during those kinds of presentations, but also within the project and on the YouTube channel, and there are talks with the artists, and this is also continuing. And then something else that they did, and they told me they wished to do more, meaning the people working on the project, is they started funding the development of complete works to be presented live. And this is, of course, they're very reliant on funding in terms of this, but there were 3 works that were funded, and the development of which was funded. And they're not only kind of redistributing the money, but they're also offering a lot of support and helping artists build the working process and find a team and kind of serving almost as an advisor to those who want to develop the works further. And this is something that also I've been told they're really looking forward to doing more, because there is, of course, there is lack of funding. There is now more funding available, but still not as much for the dance community. So this is also an important part.
When will this be presented and ready?
Some of the works have been presented already. The program, well, Let the Body Speak, there's the Baltic dance platform that was in Lithuania, if I'm not mistaken, again, I really hope, in summer this year, and they brought, I think, 6 or 7 performances there. So those are being presented. I cannot tell you when is the next one. Unfortunately, there has not yet been a presentation in Finland. Maybe this is something we need to do.
Let us know when it's due time. Please think about if you have a question somewhere lying around, because we have time for one more question here. Did you have to leave at some point, or do you have time for a Q&A?
Yeah, there's time.
Okay, good. Last, dance as a universal language. Addressing political themes in art can sometimes be controversial. As we talked about before, Luckan is we don't take a stand for or against politics or religion. With that said, we are very welcome to discuss about it. So, do you have any personal faced, or have you faced any personal challenges when it comes to your personal expression of art, when it comes to politics and reactions on this?
Well, there is a big problem of people trying to put Ukrainian and Russian artists together. So I think because Ukraine, among all the other oppressed,
like a bully and a bully.
Yeah,
Together and then shake hands and now everything is good.
I'm going to develop the thought now. So, like Ukraine, unlike most other oppressed and oppressed communities, has a bit of privilege in terms of how much access we have to venues and how much people are willing to listen to us and how much we're perceived as human beings. Nevertheless, there is a big attachment to Russian culture, and so all the topics about Ukrainians, at least while the war is happening, not wanting to be put into the same space with Russian artists because this is re-traumatizing, because you're always dealing with some, at least a hint of imperialism and many other things around that. They're always met with a lot of, not always, no, often met with a lot of resistance. And I've been watching many especially in Germany. I've lived in Germany for a year, and I've seen that happen. This attachment and somehow a very emotional need and resistance to the idea or to the request of Ukrainians to not be placed together. There's this complex of a white savior that we're going to put you in the same place, and then you're going to start negotiating, and the peace is going to come out of this, and we're going to do it for you. When the people are not really being listened to and their needs are not being heard. There are people who just don't understand the problem. There are people who believe that Russian artists are vulnerable and underrepresented. So there are many reasons for this, and there are many different contexts. But this is something that is met with a lot of resistance and a lot of aggression, sometimes also in response. On the other hand, it somehow feels important for me to say that I cannot differentiate, like art for me is political in its essence. I cannot differentiate politics from art, and I find that it's my responsibility as an artist, and then hopefully our responsibility as artists to do the work and to understand the underlying social dynamics and how the world is operating and who is the oppressor and maybe who needs to be listened to. And of course, I mean, as a Ukrainian, I did not. I've had fantastic support from the residencies, etc., etc. But for example, talking now about the genocide of Palestinian people is being faced with a lot of backlash, and with people being like, no, this is either going to ruin your career, or this is just wrong, or you're wrong, or we don't want to talk about this, or institutions are now suddenly trying to, so this is a very emotional, a very big topic for me, but like institutions who are sometimes taking stands on the war in Ukraine are then calling themselves apolitical, as if the decision to support Ukraine was not political, or as if their politics end on the moment of choosing to take the side of the oppressed in the war of Russia against Ukraine, but not go any further than this, and then not do any other work other than this. I'm going to end here, but this can be a much longer conversation for me.
But I generally agree that art can be political, but dance is not always. Like, let's say that there is some dance works that are completely political, but normally dance in itself hasn't been viewed as political art form as much as other platforms of art. So
now we're talking more about the classical scene.
Not even classical, but contemporary. Even contemporary dance, it's just a fracture that is political, because we are talking about human emotions, or we are talking about just humanity in itself without taking sides, since it's non-verbal. But I would agree, like the Baldwin said, the artists are here to disturb the peace. It's a job, You're there to provoke something that is uncomfortable. You're there to talk about something uncomfortable. It's like I went on pension 2018, and still some of my clients, they're asking, like, do you miss dancing? And I said, I miss the platform to be for a moment someone else than me, because as a dancer I was able to portray something that was not me, but still finding a way to present or to feel how the other person would feel when they are doing something or being someone else was a liberating thing. And I think for a person also watching a art piece or a dance piece, if they can feel something that they would not be themselves, is a gift, because then you're being presented an opportunity to feel, and this that they're trying to naively put together like two bad children, like now you're going to be able to learn how to behave, it's a very naive thought. You know, you shouldn't manipulate the situations that way, because of course undergoing war, you're not putting two opposite sides together and trying to solve the situation doing that. It's not in that way. When they are saying that they want to be unpolitical or uncommitted, I understand it, because art is supposed to be for everybody without choosing a side that everybody can experience or enjoy it. But still, we all end up being political. It's like my mom said, when you bow to one direction, you show your ass to another. So it's you cannot do decisions without actually closing out something else. So every decision closes out the other opportunity.
Sounds like a very Finnish expression.
Yeah, but it's a very pragmatic thing.
But I also think that this attempt to distance yourself from politics and to call yourself neutral and to call yourself apolitical is, in its essence, a deeply political decision. It's a deeply political act. And they somehow, just by taking that, kind of by vocalizing that stand, they're already making a very political stand. Yeah, that's...
Oliver?